Good afternoon. I hope everyone's having a good day. Another beautiful day here in Sarasota. Breezy and mildly cool. Sky is clear. My solar power is plugged in a distance away. I guess I'm going to be full up for tonight. Anyway, I've been continuing to review my files from reports from through the previous years, and was reminded of a sudden concern that I think is still valid, though I hope any danger has been resolved already. On the night of July 31st of 2017, I was doing a little bit of, computer work and using Bing Maps. No, I was using my weather app. It was the weather that I had on the particular computer. The name of the company is My Weather or My Radar. So anyway, I'm not gonna. Darn it. My radar. So anyway, and I noticed something that really looked worrisome. Coincidentally, in the Colorado area, just east of the Rockies, near an airport called Front Range Airport, that there was an obvious, in weather, only visible in weather, obvious circular radiating zone. It looks like, it's like kind of hollow in the middle, but all around outward kind of radiating activity. And as I spoke, one of the guys who alleges being a Marine got into the traffic sound north of here. Not one of the person's regular, as you'd expect to be regular and dutiful, but there's always an interference about everything that others would consider normally a normal concern. So anyway, he interrupts me to say the word out. And a moment before, as soon as they were made aware of this subject, they said, "Ralph's an alcoholic." No, I'm not. They use that. I'll tell you, they use the same. They use the kind of a malign religious interpretation about having drinks to cancel out anything. If you drink, that they cancel out anything that otherwise would have been accepted. So anyway, I do drink. I like to have drinks in the evening. The interference put at me at night is terrible. They're always break into air conditioning systems as though it's a stereo system for a break into, and they're always focusing from traffic. And their theme basically is terrible harassment and insulting and arguing. So I have the drinks at night to go to sleep, and sometimes I do have a little bit too much, but I can always cope without. Anyway, to get back to this subject. So what it looks like on radar is, if you see there like the motion of clouds or a storm, that within that, in certain places, that there is an obvious kind of center of activity that is visible, kind of a radiating, transmitting zone, and the look of it looks like it's meant to look like an impact crater of some kind. All right, so that was the first that I saw on the night of July 31st of 2017. Well, it was kind of late at night, so I didn't do any more studying, but soon I started to notice that there's a lot of the same kind of activity all around the nation, and it's only visible when there's weather in progress. You can't see it unless there's clouds. So anyway, in the Miami area, I've listed a few of the places in the very brief messages that I sent about it. There really isn't much to say other than point out that there's an activity, that there's some transmitters. The activity of the transmitters is able to be seen when there's weather. So anyway, there's one like I point out in one of the reports, that there's one in the South Miami area. There's overseas. There's one in South Korea. There's one in Japan near a town named Saga. Well, I wondered about that immediately, because I know that some of the guys that like to disrupt from traffic broadcasting is that they like to alter reports to have them fit into what they would describe to be a saga, and that isn't really of U.S. origin, but of partly of Scandinavian, subversive, not the good guys and gals Scandinavian, but of a subversion that again centers on the corruption of the Hitler kind of corruption. So anyway, and there's just a lot of places, and the the only map I ever saw it on, that I assume that it's possibly visible in other radar also, but on the my radar. So anyway, the concern was that, gee, why are they installing something that makes it look like that there's some kind of craters? You know, were the transmitters installed to be something of a prediction, you know, or something of a homing signal or whatever? So anyway, I kind of wondered about it, and I sent the brief messages, and it was, you know, it's a valid concern. Well, in one of the briefs that I sent, I mentioned that I suspected the former stepfather, Bill Love, about it, and he on one day he got into the traffic broadcasting wanting to say an emphasis of these transmitters. So you see, when he had his parts business, he used to travel all around the nation, visiting various airports, military bases that he bought from companies individually, and he also bid on big lots of U.S. Government surplus from Air Force bases, etc. So if he had any bad attitudes or plans or whatever, that there was, he basically indicated that there's a particular variety of transmitter that he was involved with the placement of. But I don't know anything about it. It might be a part of a stupid concern, but really, in the weather radar is made to look like a radiating, circular, and even though it isn't actually a crater, it's meant to resemble something like a crater. And of course, that brings me back to another subject that the former stepfather has started accusing me about after many years. That way back in the late 70s, mid or late 70s, I left some belongings behind him in his aircraft parts warehouse, and it included a civil defense study that included kind of a a hypothetical of what kind of dangers are we possibly facing because of the arsenals, most particularly what the Soviets used to possess, pointed at our nation, understanding that that there's others also, but really of concern about the possibility of any nuclear war, and my concern was against nuclear war. So in the particular study, I used a civil defense bulletin that from the 60s that I had from Miami when I grew up in Miami, and just to get a kind of a grasp of what kind of a possible threat there was, that I used specifications from the particular civil defense bulletin and used measurement and drew approximate size circles around various cities and towns here in the state of Florida on a road map. Rand McNally or whatever road map, the map of Florida. And so I looked at that and I thought, it's terrible that even if they hit even the smallest county seats, that they still have thousands of warheads left over. And similarly in the United States arsenal, that there's thousands of warheads. So without understanding how there could possibly be prevention, hoping that there would never be a nuclear war, that on that one map that I had circled all of the county seats of Florida, and also hypothetically that if somehow happened, if there was ever a nuclear war that an adversary wanted to be so total, that there would also be fallout. So I just hypothetically shaded in some areas from the various circles. But there wasn't any malice or plan from this about it. It was all motivated by a concern against nuclear war instead. But apparently the sneaky and devious former stepfather had a different idea in mind when he started sorting through my belongings. And I continue to be concerned and hope that the threat of nuclear war is being reduced rather than aggravated. Another recent concern, of course, is the war in Ukraine. I don't know of any details, but it had been alleged that members of the Love family had visited Ukraine during previous years, but I don't know anything about any details about it. And the former stepfather alleges being an former associate in some way of former President Trump and also President Biden. And of course, Wilmington, Delaware was probably one of the stops that Bill Love had along the way in the previous years. So without any knowledge of the details about that, I've mentioned the worry. At this time, I don't have my radar app anymore. The particular computer was broken down or whatever. But anyway, again, this is always only for our nation being safe, hoping that there won't be any nuclear war, hoping the threat of nuclear Armageddon is going to be prevented, and that there will be better understanding and a much more peaceful future instead. Have a good evening and a good weekend.